Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2 of the new Taylor Sheridan produced Paramount Plus series. That was a lot, I'm not going to say that every time. Lawmen, Bass Reeves. So, can I just say up front how much I hate this title? So I understand that this is meant to be part of a series, right? It's going to be like the Lawmen series, and this one is Bass Reeves, and there's going to be other ones, and I get it. But it just really irks me that men is plural and Bass Reeves is one person. And it gives me like, it's like it breaks me inside. It gives me the mental equivalent of like if you need to crack your knuckles and you just can't do it and you're just doing like this. And it's like, why would it fucking crack? Like, it gives me the mental equivalent of that every time I see Lawmen Bass Reeves. I'm just like, ugh. But anyway, that's all we're here to talk about the title. If you've been around this channel for a while, you know I was covering this show. I wouldn't say that I'm a big fan of all things Taylor Sheridan TV, but he does consistently do something that I tend to embrace in television and film, which is showing me something that I've never seen before. With Yellowstone, he showed me that cowboys in Montana can be like the media moguls on Succession, or, on 1883, he gave me like a realistic portrayal of like the difficulty of settling new land with minimal resources. Like things that would be a cakewalk today could be deadly back then. And I found that really compelling to watch. And it was also, aside from that, it was still a really compelling series, a really compelling story. All that good stuff, really well acted. Just like all of his shows generally tend to be, at least within this Yellowstone universe. And because of that, as Sheridan moves across like the America's chronological timeline, telling his version, his story of how the West was settled through the eyes of the Dutton family and its offshoots. He's pretty much got my eyes on every project at this point. So when they announced he was doing a show on Bass Reeves, the first black U.S. Deputy Marshal, I was all in. Starring David Oyelowo, say less. Like I'm ready to watch it. I'm there on day one. But apparently, this is the first Sheridan produced show that he didn't actually create or co-create. This one is created by a guy named Chad Feehan. I think he was like the lead writer on Ray Donovan, which that's a pretty, at least especially if he was like the lead writer on the first couple seasons. Like I didn't finish Ray Donovan, but Ray Donovan was a pretty good show. So like that's not something where you would you wouldn't take that seriously. Like, a lead writer on Ray Donovan, I'm like, okay, well, that's somebody good to bring in. But I think this is his first time, creating a show and having that showrunner role. So, we'll see. But fortunately, I don't really see too much of a change between this and what I'm accustomed to seeing within this franchise, as far as like the tone and things like that. 1883, 1923, it feels about tonally the same. So let's talk about what this show is about. So Bass Reeves is a real-life historical figure. He actually existed. He was a former slave who fought for the Confederacy in the Civil War. And the show, in the first episode in particular, it very lightly rapped on the door of him being looked at, not even him being looked at as a traitor among his people, but just kind of just like how just raising that question, kind of getting the audience to think like, how does this look if you're a slave at the time to see someone in this position? And they give you that just a little bit, and I kind of wish they dug a little bit farther into that, and they still may, obviously. I mean, we only got 2 episodes. I think it's 8, I want to say. So, yeah, there's still time to do that. I kind of suspect that they won't. It felt like something that they were just kind of just like, yeah, we're just going to tickle that, and then, but we're going to keep doing it. We're going to focus on what we want to do, but we're not going to get too far into being a race traitor. But, aside from that, too, though, I actually listened to a podcast the other day that talked about how there was a surprising lack of racism among deputy marshals back then, because they really just saw each other as like brothers, partners in law, kind of like police do now, like that fraternity, that brotherhood. And they didn't really look at it as like, oh, there's a black deputy marshal and I'm a white deputy marshal. It was like, oh, we're both putting our asses on the line. That's my brother, and I'm gonna support him. Just how it's the same way the police are today, just ironically minus the racism, which has now done a complete 180 and is now the most recognizable aspect of law enforcement. Never mind, let's not get into that. But I'm just saying, I was shocked to learn about the lack of racism in law enforcement back then. That's all I'm saying. But so Bass makes a name for himself as kind of like a general badass who accumulated a shit ton of arrests, and supposedly this show is going to be his story. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't segue here into talking about something this show did that I did not like. And I didn't like how the first episode was basically like a prologue. This seems to be like an up-and-coming strategy that maybe shows seem to be doing right now. House of the Dragon did it for a lot longer than this show did. But I thought they did it fairly well because it was so extended. You could, even though it jumped in time, you still really felt like you weren't missing anything important because, one, you got everything important, but two, it was like their prologue was like 4 episodes or some shit. So there was like a lot of time for them to build up to that. So they were still able to cover a lot. You didn't really feel like you missed too much. But that same dynamic, it made the first episode of this show, when you take out commercials and you're running 42 minutes, give or take, it made this first episode feel really disjointed with a lot of time jumps, a lot of time spent on things that, at the time at least, feel like they really don't matter, or that they're not really telling us anything important, to the point where I'm guessing about what some of the secondary plot lines might be based on the scenes that felt kind of pointless in these first 2 episodes. I'm like, that has to be there for a reason, so maybe this is tied into the B plot. Like, that's the kind of mental gymnastics I'm doing here to kind of elevate some of the scenes that kind of felt like, why did I need to see that? It's like this show hasn't found the proper balance between giving, I think, too much backstory and giving too little. Like, I don't mind an entire episode that's backstory, but I feel like the episode itself, it needs to be a story. Like, it needs to encompass the story part of backstory if you're gonna do something like that. But this first episode, it felt more like a collection of events that took place at various points in time. And we spent a quarter of this episode like seeing his time as a slave during the war. Then there's like 17 consecutive scenes of him just walking across the Midwest after he has to leave his family. And then there's like a whole section of story where he basically gets a new family, loses them, and then returns to his original one. And then this shit spans like 12 years in time. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, the whole situation with the second family, like, that had to be a very pivotal time in his life. So I understand why that shit is included, right? Like, it's an important time in his life. It probably went a long way toward developing and making him into the person that he became. But, man, it sure felt like a big fucking waste of time for me to spend just 20 minutes with them before we jump ahead 10 years and put him back with his original family again. Like, it was kind of like, it felt like, why did I need to see that? Like I know I needed to see that, but why did I need to see that? That's just kind of what it felt like, man. So we're also introduced to a lot of characters and actors we can expect to see throughout the season. Shea Wiggum is unexpectedly in the first 20 or so minutes of the first episode. I didn't know he was on this. I love Shea Wiggum, and he's absolutely great. in the time that we spend with him in episode 1 as well. He plays Bass's owner, George Reeves. Bass later returns to George's house, I think in the second episode, and even though his wife is there and she mentions that he is alive and in politics, we don't actually physically see him, which makes me worry that was more of a cameo than anything, and that sucks. Because, like I said, I really like Shea Wiggum. Once I saw him, I was like, please let Shea Wiggum be around for this whole season. That would be a very unexpected surprise to get somebody like him on here. So, I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but I guess we'll see. Let's see, where am I? Barry Pepper. He plays a character named Esau. I don't know too much about him yet. What I do know, I would consider to be a spoiler, so I'll just let you learn about him while watching the show. But Barry Pepper, if you don't know Barry Pepper, I mean, great fucking actor. He's one of those actors that I know for a fact his character's gonna be fucking great on this show. He's great in the time that we spend with him in these first 2 episodes, so I hope we get to see him some more throughout the season. Dennis Quaid, he's all over the promotional work. He plays a guy named Cheryl Lynn. He's the deputy that ends up recruiting Bass into the Marshals. There's a really great scene in episode 2 where you've spent this whole time up to this point with Quaid's character, hearing him be very venomous toward Native people. And there's a scene toward the end of episode 2 where he explains why he's like that. It's a great scene, and you can tell Quaid's gonna eat this shit up. He's going to be great. I hope we see more of him as well. But let me pause right there, though, because the reason I keep saying I hope we see more of these characters, these actors, is because it seems like Sharon is almost developing this habit of, like, promoting shows as having big names starring in them, but then the big names don't show up that often. Like, it's like, oh, here they are. And you be, oh, Nicole Kidman's on this show, and then you find out she's not. She's on it, but not a lot. Like that's how she was used very sparingly, I think, on Special Ops Lioness. Granted, she was used more than I expected, though. But, like, Morgan Freeman, I don't even think you visually see Morgan Freeman until the 6th episode, and he's, like, right in the poster and shit. So, like, they're both, I think, for very obvious reasons, prominently featured on the ad material, but I think sparingly used on the show. So that's why I'm kind of, like, not getting too excited about Shea Wiggum or Dennis Quaid or, according to the preview for episode 3, Donald fucking Sutherland. Like, I'm not getting too excited about that because I don't want to get in the space of like, oh, I can't wait to see these characters every week, and then that's it. We get them in like 1 episode or 2. So that's why I keep saying, like, if we get to see this person. So, yeah, that's weird that I'm kind of just not like, oh, this is the cast. It's like, well, this is the cast, and hopefully we'll get to see them. But like I said a while back, the first episode really felt like a prologue that was meant to inform us on Bass and who he is, why he's the way he is, and I don't mind that. I just didn't like that the backstory wasn't a collective story. It was more like watching like a long fucking like highlight reel with scenes that ultimately, some, not all of them, but some, that felt kind of irrelevant, and it didn't have any windmill dunks. So like, why would I watch that highlight reel? But yeah, I don't know. It becomes significantly less interesting after we stop seeing Shea Wiggum. So I think that's the best way to put it. Like that first episode, after the Shea Wiggum portion is over, it I won't say dips in quality because that sounds insulting, and I still enjoyed the show, but yeah, like it wasn't uninteresting. It's just that seeing what Reeves had to go through is both interesting and necessary for us to understand who he is. And Oyolowo is playing the role with a lot of stifled rage, which I can personally relate to. It's just that it takes a slight dip in intrigue just because it starts to feel very kind of that's when we start getting the time jumps, and it starts to feel kind of wonky and disjointed, a little bit bloated. But like I said, a lot of those things could end up being more relevant as the season continues. It's just in watching that first episode, I was a little bit kind of just like, I don't know where this is going. Episode 2, it jumps 10 years to the future. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this, by the way. And we get more kind of like, this is what his life is like now montages that I had grown tired of by the time we had stopped seeing them. But I don't know how many times they think I need to see him farming to understand that he's trying to be a farmer. But the answer to that question is 1. That's the only amount of times I need to see him farming. I didn't need to see it like 5 times like they showed me, but whatever. So Dennis Quaid's character, Cheryl Lynn, he arrives in the second episode, and he wants to recruit Bass for a job because he needs someone who can speak the native tongue, and he learned also that Bass was a badass. And he's hesitant, but by this point, they've already shown me that he's a shitty farmer like 18 times. So it's no surprise that Cheryl sells him on you're a broke shitty farmer and you need the money. Like that works, and that gets Bass to do the job. And then episode 2 basically just focuses on that job, which obviously I'm not going to spoil, but by the end of the episode, Bass did the job as well as you could imagine. So he ultimately ends up getting offered a permanent regular job, an actual job as a U.S. Deputy Marshal. And I'm just like, did I watch a second prologue episode? I'm like, for real though, like, so now we're at episode 3, and he's just now becoming a U.S. Marshal, which means they're just now starting to tell the actual story for the season, which kind of feels like, yeah, those first 2 episodes were kind of like 2 separate prologues. It was like, one, it was like, here's how he got to the point of almost becoming a deputy marshal. And then the second episode was like, here's the one event that made him become a deputy marshal that we're going to play out for this episode. And then now for the rest of the season, we can see him as a deputy marshal. So that's... I don't know, man. I'm not a big fan of this prologue shit, man. Like, I don't even know what you would call that. Like, the episode 1 was a prelogue, and then this episode 2 is a prologue. But now, because of that, it's actually not difficult, but a little tricky to give my like a full kind of like, this is what I think of the show kind of opinion, because a part of me feels like I haven't really seen the show yet. Like, I've seen the background information that they want me to have before they tell me the story they want me to know. But I kind of feel like I haven't really, okay, so I know it's going to be well acted. I've already seen that. I know it's going to look amazing. It already looked amazing in these first 2 episodes. That Sheridan shows, they always look amazing. It shows in this universe. I know those things. But when it comes right down to it, what's going to separate this show from 1883 and 1923 and Yellowstone? And I can't really tell you that aside from the fact that it's got a black guy as the lead. But like I said, I don't really feel like I've gotten into what they want to show me. And I know they want to show me this guy, Bass Reeves, becoming a great U.S. deputy. I know that. But like, there has to be a this is how we're going to tell this story. And I don't really feel like I've gotten that yet. So that's why I kind of feel like I can't give a full opinion. But I did enjoy what I've seen so far, even though I've cracked a lot of jokes on it. And I do intend on continuing watching the show for right now. Now, if episode 3 is another fucking if episode 3 is the post-log, then then I might bail on the show. But no, I enjoyed these first 2 episodes. I'm being a little bit hard on it, but again, at the end of the day, I do really feel like they kind of made these first 2 episodes a prologue. I don't really know exactly what the story is going to be just yet. And I felt like these first 2 episodes were a little bit bloated, but again, they could be leading into something great. So it's just the fact that I don't know what that is yet. I don't know what the A+ necessarily going to look like. So it's difficult for me to, for example, distinguish it from what the other plots might be. Because you don't just have, you could have a B plot, you probably have a C plot. But they do seem to be setting up a couple of things that I kind of picked up on that they don't seem to be all that great. But I'm hoping there's going to be more to them, and I suspect that there will. So the show's clearly going to make Bass's wife's home life a plot line. So far, all they've done with that is have a delivery boy have a crush on their daughter, and they've had some wolves kill a calf. And the thing with delivery boy, there were 2 scenes for that, both of which felt entirely pointless unless they plan on forming something of a relationship and having a plot line with him and the daughter. So like when I said earlier, that's what I meant about some scenes that felt kind of pointless. But then I just thought, oh, this must be why. That's what that was. Like the first scene is a scene where he's delivering a piano to her. And then the second scene is one where he comes back pretending like he wants to work on the piano because he wants to see the daughter and she tells him to fuck off. That's the 2 scenes that we get. Hey, I guess that's maybe a spoiler. I don't know. But I really hope that doesn't sully your experience that I told you those 2 scenes. But my point is, jack shit happened in those 2 scenes. And I watched it, I'm like, what is the point of this? But I'm like, okay, this whole thing with the daughter and this boy, this must go somewhere. So maybe that's why. So that's what I meant when I said I was kind of withholding judgment on some of the scenes that felt kind of pointless at the time, because I feel like they might be turning into something different, something interesting. I definitely think this thing with the delivery boy and the daughter is going to be a thing. Will it be a thing that's interesting to watch? I don't know, but we'll see. Let's see. So, religion also seems to be a big theme here, and I'm interested to see what they're going to do with that, if anything. Again, I don't know. Guessing. I'm assuming it's important because Bass is very religious. We hear him talk about it a lot. Shea Wiggum's character George has a great conversation with him in episode 1 about what he thinks happened in his life for black people. I'm sorry, it's shitty and it's funny at the same time. I'm sorry. It's like Shea Wiggum has some hilarious moments of racism in this first 20 minutes of this episode. That it's like, oh, as a black person, but then it's like a human who has a funny moment. It's like, anyway, and Dennis Quaid's character berates Bass for believing in a God that will enslave him. So like, there's a big religious theme, which religion is permeant in Black history anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see what they're gonna do with it. But those 3 conversations, they haven't led anywhere yet, so I don't know for sure that religion will play a significant role thematically, but I kind of hope that it does. So that's all I got for my non-spoiler thoughts of the first 2 episodes. Like I said, overall, pretty enjoyable, with great potential, but I don't really feel like I know what this show is going to be yet, because these first 2 episodes kind of both felt like prologues to the story that they actually want to tell. So I'll be back here next Monday to talk about episode 3, full spoiler-filled details. Hopefully we'll have a better idea where this show is going, and until then, peace.